All right, so I wanted to come on here and address the recent short report that was released regarding Nutex Health. And this is a stock that I made a video on in the past, actually two videos. And it's a healthcare company. They basically operate micro hospitals, and these are, smaller hospitals that are put in places where the bigger hospitals aren't available. And they're rapidly growing. Their revenues are really solid. Their financials are solid. Their seeking alpha page is pretty much perfect. But recently they had a short firm called Blue Orchid Capital, which released a short report on Nutex Health, and that sent the stock price a little bit lower. So, we went from around 115 to 95. So I just wanted to kind of address, what I'm thinking and why I'm not really worried, and kind of see this more as a buying opportunity than, maybe some time to panic or maybe think about selling, which you definitely should not do. So, we were kind of in this quiet period with NUTX. Obviously the big thing here is earnings, which we'll kind of talk about a little later. But we're in this kind of quiet period. No news is being announced. And if you know anything about these short firms, is that they like to take advantage of these small companies. So NUTX is, very small, only 500 million market cap, around that. And especially in these quiet periods when there's no news, because earnings is coming out very soon. So companies kind of getting ready for that. And they just announced these short reports with really really baseless claims. This exact same thing happened to Gorilla, actually. If you know Gorilla Technology, they just basically say they're a fraudulent company, and then kind of state some reasons. With Nutex, it was that their out of office billing practices were associated with some sort of fraudulent firm. It's not even them that's fraudulent, it's the other firm that is, but they were kind of associated with them. But really all you have to know is that the claims aren't true. They're never true. That's really how it works. If they were true, it would be more well-known source that was releasing the short report. Like you'd see a bigger analyst announcing it or something else, not these, these shorters that literally just have a list of companies they're short on. And that's not how that works when it's actually true. So, what they do is they announce a short. So in this case, it was on July 21st, and then they just take profits. I think this thing went down to probably around $88, I think was the lowest it went. And, then it bounces up, and then, everything's back to normal, but they get their profits, and investors are maybe a little scared. Some of them. I'm definitely not scared. If it's the exact same buy as when it was at 170. There's been no new business changes to Nutex since then. There was the idea of a dilution, which does not affect the revenues or the business at all. It's just investors maybe their confidence was a little lower. It dropped from 170, and then now the short report it's at 95. So you have to think about that. Nothing changed with the business. We have had no new business reports. We're just waiting for earnings, and it's at an $80 discount. So in my opinion, that's an amazing buying opportunity coming up on earnings, which are coming up August 7th to 14th. It's kind of, we're waiting on that exact date there. But, you look at their earnings, and the last two earnings, this was the two earnings ago was March 31st. We were at around $50, and we jumped to around 150. So it's around a 3x return. And the last earnings was May 13th. And went from 125 to around 175, so that's around a 40% return. So you look at those two, and you're thinking to yourself, that's a very solid track record. And I think this 40% return was kind of a little bit of an outlier in this new era of Nutex Health. You see these last two earnings; these are the revenues. And two earnings ago, you saw stronger revenues than last earnings. So the best part is that even with declining earnings from declining revenue from the last earnings session, the stock still jumped 40%. Obviously, it's a lot lower than the 3x. So again, it's a lot to be excited about. If they have these earnings shoot up to these levels again or higher, you could see the stock again 3x, because it only has a 9 price to earnings around that. There's only 500 million market cap, and they're making a lot of money. They're making $212 million per quarter. That's a lot to make for such a small company, like 500 million. And then you look at their net incomes, and same exact thing. They're profitable now, and but you saw a little bit of a drop from last time, from the two earnings ago, but the stock still shot up. So a lot to be excited for the earnings between August 7th and August 14th. And I'll make another video on when the exact date is announced, just before the earnings, to kind of overview, why I again think this is a great buy. I think this is by far the best buying opportunity on the market right now in terms of how much it can grow. Again, they're making $600 million a year right now, and that's growing, and they're only 500 million market cap. You don't see any company like that where their earnings are more than their market cap. So I think once this thing really gets discovered, which is, again, after those catalysts, after the earnings, it could go up to $300. You could see it go up to, be a multi-billion-dollar company, and that's just kind of exciting that you have this opportunity right now to buy more when it's on $95. You may never see these levels again. And more likely than not, it's not going to go down because they're making just so much money compared to their market cap. Even the down quarter, which there's no reason why they would even have a down quarter. But if they did, probably would still see returns. Obviously, not as great as the 3x. You could see 20%, 30%. So I think there's very, very little risk here compared to the reward that you're going to get, especially at these levels. If we're talking 170, maybe there's obviously a lot more risk. But we're at 95 now, and the stock, reacted, I think, fairly well to the short report, where we withheld those levels of just kind of hovering around the 100 level until earnings. So if you have not bought already, I would definitely not panic. The short report is something that happens to basically all small companies at some point. It's ways for these firms to make easy, quick money. So the big thing that you're looking for is earnings. If you have not bought yet before earnings, I would strongly suggest you to you can just take a little second to look for yourself at their earnings, their growth, and why the market cap is still so low. Again, it's a heavily beat down stock. They had really struggles for the first couple years, and as of recently, the last year, they have really picked it up. And I think it's just a couple more months before other people and institutions start to realize that this could be the future. These micro hospitals. So let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and please